And action.
We are live. Welcome back to Gloves Off with Seth and Jack. Tri-weekly? Tri-weekly?
Oh, at best.
Three times weekly? Does that mean every 3 weeks tri-weekly? Or what does that mean?
That means 3 times a week.
Tri-weekly. The tri-weekly.
You see, Seth, if you went to college, you would have learned that.
I did go to college. It didn't go well at all.
Yeah, either did mine.
No. They tried to teach me things that, Jack, is it me, or was the educational system, conceived in like popular education on demand for the public? Isn't that an idea that's like 400 years old?
Well, in my private high school, we didn't have music. We didn't have art. We had football and soccer and tennis. But
Which one did you do? Did you do tennis?
Yeah, it was a prep school. And universities were not interested in artists. They were not interested in musicians. They wanted you to become a doctor, a lawyer, maybe a well-paid accountant. And that's what they wanted. So I'm looking at, do we have any viewers yet, Seth?
3 of them so far. It's getting much, much faster.
Could you?
I can't tell who it is, Jack. I just can see that there are 3 eyeballs watching.
Okay.
We had like 270 views the other day. That was great.
Okay. Now, Seth, it's important that we somehow identify who they are so we can say hello.
I guess it's in process. I would love nothing more than that. If they want to identify themselves by showing up in the chat window, then we'll be able to do that. Other than that, I'm kind of I scared one away, Jack. Now we're down to 2. Now we're down to 1. See, as soon as you start asking people to, pay attention, they're like, I got to take off.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah, it would be great to immediately be able to identify who they are.
Instant audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but
so Jack, what's in the news? What do you want to talk about, man?
Well,
what's tickling your fancy?
See. The election was a hoax. Okay, we know that.
I keep saying that. You don't want to believe me, but I keep saying that.
Okay. Trump spends the morning making his case for victory as even Jared and Ivanka abandon him in legal attempt to overturn Joe Biden's win.
Jackie boy, did you see Ivanka freaking out on Twitter last night?
No, tell me.
It's great. Hey, let's ask like a little question. How do you know when a prosecution has legs? When Ivanka Trump starts freaking out about it on Twitter.
Tell me what she said.
Oh, the New York Cy Vance is operating a politically motivated inquiry of my family. You know what that means?
Is that what she said?
That's what she said. So you know what that means? That means that when Jessica, the brilliant art historian and wife of me, Jessica, when she said, "Hey, did you notice when they showed the picture of Jared and Ivanka's apartment? Did you happen to notice how many modern artists they had? And did you notice that those things weren't disclosed on their financial disclosures?"
Yes, good point.
And this is Jack. Did we have this conversation 4 years ago? I remember,
Oh, we did. And the other thing we mentioned at the time, Trump has a Cezanne hanging in his apartment right near the hallway to the door.
Yes,
and it turns out the original is in the Chicago Museum of Modern Art.
So it's a fake Cezanne.
Yes, although
is it hanging next to his framed copy of the Man of the Year Time magazine?
That's, I think, at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, or the golf.
Isn't that wonderful?
What a fake Cezanne?
But anyway, tell me more about Ivanka. It says here that she is abandoning him in legal attempt to overturn Joe Biden's win.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, now that the wheels have come off that cart, and the entire nation is saying, "Hey," and then the associated headline, because this is not like there are all sorts of comorbidity headlines. The associated headline is Trump. CNN reported yesterday, quote, "Trump knows that his bids to overturn the election are going nowhere, but he wants to do it to spite the Democrats for claiming his 2016 victory was tainted by the Russians, which of course it was.
Now, these two yo-yos from Michigan that are being invited to the White House today, how is that going to go?
Well, yo-yo number one,
Mm-hmm.
Let's call him gray-haired, bespectacled, dad haircut yo-yo.
Got him.
You know, upper middle management douchebag in Michigan guy, former auto industry Torquemada human resources executive,
Assistant manager at Tire Warehouse.
that guy,
food stamps. Yeah.
right? That guy who got into politics.
Mm-hmm.
This guy goes to the airport to get on a flight to go to DC, followed by like a gaggle of people with posters. Count every vote, you son of a bitch. Where are you going? What are you doing? So his trip to the airport was, his walk down the airport colonnade was an eventful one for him. So he gets on his flight, he gets on his flight to go to DC to meet with the president, because, as you know, Jack, when the president calls a Republican official, you're compelled to go.
This is probably the most obvious case of bullying he's done so far.
It's amazing.
I mean, think of it. It's
amazing.
It's unbelievable when he runs out of resources, and they're going to get shouted at. They'll probably have a burger for lunch if they're treated well.
Yeah.
I find it amazing.
So, everybody kind of is. I think some people have thought, oh, well, is this guy really going to go to jail? Is this really going to happen? And I'm like, dude, how is this guy not going to jail? I mean, he's committed wholesale fraud for years.
Yes, I think we have a viewer, Emma Silverstein. Oh, sorry, Silverton. Sorry.
Yeah, it's now the show is that pathetic that we have friends and family.
Only family. Even right. No friends, just family. Hi, Emma.
Right. So that's with a cute little, emoji thing where she's watching.
Do you think what they should have there? Instead of sending hearts and things, you should be able to send up a little floating grenade that goes up half the screen and then it goes kaboosh.
Give it a little time.
Yeah.
I mean, give it a little time. AJ's here too. Speaking of which, I'm on the couch the other night, minding my own business. AJ's got his cell phone in his hand, hands me a picture of his cell phone, and it is a rainbow picture of like an image of, the graphic of gravity where there's a grid on a disc and then gravity dives into the middle. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a plane, and it's folded in on itself, kind of origami-like. So it's the same concept of a time and space plane, but it's folded in rainbow and graph. And he holds it up to me and he's like, look at this. I said, yeah, that's trippy. He said, it's completely non-Euclidean.
He never played football.
What?
He never played football, did he?
No, he kills people all day in video games.
Oh, he does.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's his talent. Well, yeah. Thank him so much, guys. If you want to buy a new phone, AJ works at the Verizon store near Walmart, and he is an absolute delight to deal with. An absolute delight. So if you're looking for a new phone, trust me, he's the guy to go see because he's a rock star.
Anybody that can use the word non-Euclidean in conversation can probably figure out the Android operating system.
True, but can't we encourage him to try to do it just from the enclave of his own bedroom or
baby steps?
Yes. Okay. I get baby steps. So Tucker Carlson, talk to me.
Oh, this little fucking Nazi in training. So, what is he? He's kept a pretty low profile. I mean, he was hot like a couple of weeks ago. Now I can't hear from. What's the story, Tucker Carlson? I haven't heard from this idiot in a while. As the wheels have been coming off the cart.
He had to apologize for something, I think.
Stop.
Yes, he apologized on the air, and I don't know specifically what it was, but he had to apologize.
Was it for being a douche?
It was for something he said that was about the election, and I don't know what it was. But he says that apparently Obama is a bigger narcissist than Trump.
Oh, is that what he said?
Yes.
Right.
But then again, imagine a person,
Based on what?
particularly a black man who was head of the Harvard Law Review when he was there. Why wouldn't you be a narcissist? I mean, if
No,
you had a
I mean,
reason to be a narcissist.
where do you get off? I mean, it's the projection of this party is absurd. All
Yeah.
of a sudden, Obama's a narcissist. How did
Yeah.
that happen? I think he's a well-grounded, empathetic human being.
Yes. Well, talk about projection. When Trump started accusing people of being pedophiles, everything Trump does is projection. As a matter of fact, you could go down the list and you could see that literally everything he does, he's projecting his own character.
Why don't we just go through the list of things he's accused people of so that we can get if only prosecutors in the federal government were this smart.
Wasn't that a Roy Cohn thing that you accuse the opposition of what you're guilty of?
Yep.
It's getting a little hot in here. The sun's out.
I know. Well, you have that fantastic view. I mean,
yeah, it's beautiful.
You know, that nobody's got a better office setup than you, my man.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. But, you know, after a while, I've lived in New York where you look out over a brick building. You have too. And after a while, you become, no matter how beautiful it is, you become inured.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's the existential part of human nature that's really a disaster.
It's really true.
Accept the good things in life, but you become absolutely inured to them.
When I first moved here, did you have that experience when you first moved here? When you're kind of blown away by the visual imagery of this part of the world, and then like 3 weeks later, you're like, oh yeah, there's that beautiful scene that I pass every day on my way to wherever.
The thing that I became aware of when I came here first is that it was sort of shabby and second rate, and the maintenance was ignored, and you had lunch at a hot dog stand somewhere in Rockland, you know, with a lawyer. And when you live in New York and you're taking clients out, you're always going to really fancy places for lunch and stuff like this. I thought it's impoverished. It's West Virginia.
Yeah.
And then after a while,
it stopped being that.
It stops. This is normal life.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. You enjoy the patina. You enjoy the people. You enjoy not locking your car. I left my laptop on the seat of my motorcycle for an hour in Camden once. Came back and it was there.
Oh, that's not because people are nice here. That's just because people didn't want to be infected by the viruses that you had on it.
Well, this was 20 years ago, Seth.
And so even worse.
Okay. So what else? So Tucker Carlson, we shouldn't waste too much time on him because he is such an asshole.
I love the idea that Ivanka and Jared both are in the same boat as Trump, and that there's this massive disconnect between people that are just trying to get to Inauguration Day and don't have and people don't have like the capacity to consider that, you know, that all these people, that there are separate processes happening that are going to result in justice being served. I mean, Ivanka, Jared, you know that Don Jr. and Eric are not smart enough to understand potential criminality. You know that all of these people are listed in Trump charities and on Trump properties.
Sure. But the other thing, Seth, is keep in mind, they've been watching their father get away with it for decades.
Yeah, it's a pattern of behavior of criminality.
Yes.
That's ingrained in their behavior professionally. And you see it on full display when they attained power that they never expected that they were going to attain. So now we got a situation where you've got a pattern of behavior which just so happens to be extremely attractive to the Republican base. I was talking with a very familiar name to you who will remain nameless, but one of my few remaining Republican friends.
That's an oxymoron.
Well, at this point, let me ask you a question. If you asked every pickup truck driver that had a Trump 2020 and American flag flying on the back, if you asked them this very simple question, do you feel that Democrats should be allowed to govern? What percentage of the population do you feel would say no of the Republican electorate? The same Republican electorate that believes that this election was rigged.
Yeah, huge percent.
What percentage of those? So there is, by definition, a huge percentage of people in this country who cannot, by definition, participate in a representative democracy.
Okay.
How do my feeling is technology is the only thing that can take us out of that.
Yeah, we have to. It's going to take a long time, Seth. You know this better than anyone, for us to acclimatize ourselves with the technology and be able to continue any form of democracy, given what today's technology is. I mean, look already how transparent the corruption of government has become. Now, it's not just Trump. As you know, I mean, you're the one who brings up this idea. It's not Trump. It's the technology that allows us to see granular into the corruption of government, and this goes for every country. So that's destabilizing.
I mean, he is like the perfect. I got to be honest, Jack. If it wasn't for the compelling nature of Adolf Hitler, the Holocaust wouldn't have happened, and that rise of fascism wouldn't have happened.
They were talking today on NPR about Nuremberg, and they were saying, you know, usually what happens in a case like this, you take these guys out and you shoot them in the head. And there was a guest who had written a lot about this, and he said Nuremberg was very possible because it was a civilized trial addressing incredibly uncivilized behavior, and it made it transparent for the world. So you literally had hard evidence in a setting where it could be delivered. And of course, as a spectacle. Can you imagine if we had a Nuremberg trial for Trump and his family? The viewership, pay-per-view, Seth.
Well, we're getting up there in the death count, aren't we?
We are. Let's push for that. I think they should all be on the docket so they can all watch each other. They have certain members of them would have headphones on just because they're speaking English. You know what we could do? There'd be great graphics instead of. You know where I'm going with this, right?
I mean, and nobody has a better FU game going than the people that run the Chiron at CNN.
They're quick studies.
Oh my God.
They are quick studies.
I mean, and in live time fact checking the Mango Mussolini in real time.
Right.
You know, it's awesome. I just love that.
Oh,
so what else aside from Ivanka and Jared going to jail for the artwork that's up on their wall that we've known, and like 4 years ago, you say, okay, here's what's going to happen. That artwork that's up on the wall is not listed in financial disclosures that they had to do legally for the federal government.
Absolutely.
And we said this 4 years ago, right? I
Yes.
remember the time we're sitting in a booth at Boynton McKay before Brian served us our, what the hell was it called? That delicious thing that he served with the hash browns and the eggs and the chorizo and the
that's the skillet breakfast one.
Oh, skillet breakfast one, and then skillet breakfast two. There was an off the menu thing, by the way. If it ever comes back, Boynton McKay, which I'm sure it will, skillet menu 12 is both of them combined.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do a shout out. By the way, Isaac is with us again.
As is Jim Mays checking in.
Yeah, Jim Mays.
Jim Mays says check them for the pills.
Okay. So a shout out for Boynton McKay because
Brian, yeah.
I got to tell you, if there's a loss from COVID for us, Brian, it's you.
Can he
And
come over? And can he just run things over to the house, you think, Jack?
I don't think he has a person working on delivery. Although Sue, who does delivery for the pizzeria, has her own business, her own truck.
Is that Kraft?
It's a little white truck with Christmas lights on it.
Yeah, Kraft Delivery is this local delivery service that
Yeah, that may be her.
now.
That
Yeah.
may be her. And
Yeah.
she would deliver, which in fact is a very good solution to what the problems that we're going to be having.
Well, I mean, with the problems that we're going to be having for at least until April, when we're all going to be vaccinated, and then after vaccination, it's National Creepy Hug an Older Man Week. That's when older men who haven't been able to hug people will start. You know, I'm talking about you and I.
That's a month.
I haven't seen you in so long. And then anybody who's less than 30 years old heads for the hills. Like all of my kids' friends and be like, "Oh God, he tried to hug me in public."
I think that's going to be a month, not a week.
Something like that.
I'm trying to be optimistic.
Can you imagine all of the devious behavior that's going to happen? That people have been isolated from each other for a year straight. Nobody's been able to date. I can't imagine the depravity that I'm going to be seeing online.
Well, I tell you one thing you're going to see, whether you like it or not. You're going to see Jack out there with Brian Bennett and some of his friends, guitar playing, blues harp player, and we're going to be out there a couple of times a week playing on the bench.
Well, that's why this is useful. We can promote that here.
We can. And I'm waiting for a couple of other people to get back to me who are really good musicians that I've seen perform, so we can get together and work out some stuff and have a really cool sort of blues band.
Yep. I would, if
that
I was
an
you,
eye roll? Was that
no. I'm thinking. If I was you, I was just thinking maybe you want to check with Randy first to see how many are on parole. Because you don't want to, you don't want to establish a band, get a whole vibe going, and then all of a sudden, one of them gets carted off to the Hooskow. You don't want that. You want to have regulars that you can count on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like having coffee with Alan Weaver, where he gets a call and he has to go out as a policeman, throw somebody over a car, and then come back and hope his coffee is still warm.
Fiona says that we can live stream that too.
I'm sorry?
Fiona Chong chimes in and says we can live stream that too.
Fiona, I miss you guys.
Everybody misses Fiona. Fiona, hello.
Have you met Fiona?
Only on Facebook. She's a big fan of both of our feeds.
I will tell you, a couple of years ago, she was at the workshop. I had my deux chevaux in town. I think it was the deux chevaux. And she comes up and she's looking at it. I said, "How do you like it?" And she said, "Oh, it's wonderful." I said, "Let's go for a ride." And she said, "Sure," and hopped in. Okay. And we went for a ride. We became fast friends. And she's a photographer.
And only then.
Oh, look, I saw a comment from Isaac Remsen.
That's right, because I'm putting them up.
Oh, yeah, but it says ha, ha, ha. Did you put that up too?
I did, because I'm curating it.
Oh, I thought maybe he said ha, ha, ha. Can
he? He did. I'm just, I'm very simply putting up all of the, comments in succession so that they make sense.
Oh, great. So you can do that. So if somebody comments, you can put them up. Is that right?
That's right. And Fiona says, "I think I've met Seth at least once, if not a couple of times." I think so too.
As an answer to that, Seth, he's not that memorable. So it's really
first of all, Fiona is a she. Okay, so let's get that straight right.
I didn't say he.
I know you said he's not that memorable.
I know. Oh no, I'm talking about you, Seth.
I know. I was making a point.
Don't do this to me, Seth. Okay, I'll sign off.
It'll be gloves off with Seth, and let's go troll through the list. Isaac or Fiona.
Okay, so the Daily News today has nicknamed Rudy. You ready?
Yeah.
Uzi Giuliani. That's good. I like that.
OOZ. Uzi Giuliani.
Uzi Giuliani.
I said yesterday, I thought it was the problem with some of these older Italian models is leaky valve cover gaskets.
That's exactly what, as I said to you, it's like when that sealer that you use on engines, that brown stuff, and if it ever gets soft, which it almost never does because it's heat resistant, when it does, it looks exactly like that.
So this implies it kind of the whole event, Jack, implies that we can open up the head and work on it and fix whatever the F is wrong with this idiot's thought processes and seal it back up with a new valve cover gasket and some of that valve sealer that they sell at the auto parts store.
You know, this really is visual evidence of the expression blow a gasket. Because he really does. He, like, when he goes live, he is just exploding all over. The pressure is, and it comes out as pores. So anybody that hasn't seen Borat's last film, you have to wait for the really good jokes, but they're pretty funny when they come.
I can't do the cringe factor, man.
What's that?
I just can't do the cringe factor. It's off the charts for me.
It's when they were dancing for this coming out party. That was at the limit. It really was.
I know, but then you take it out of context, and your favorite song from Borat, "Throw the Jew in the Well."
Yes, that was funny.
I mean, that's hysterical stuff.
Did you see the close-ups of those guys that were in that cowboy bar when he was performing that? I mean, it was one of those chicken wire bars where the whole state has chicken wire in front of it because people throwing shit at the band all the time. But the looks on the faces of those guys.
Those are the same people that don't think that Democrats should govern, Jack.
I know.
Guy on MSNBC last night said, we can trace this back to Newt Gingrich. This idea that Democrats should not be able to govern.
Yes.
Like, and then Gingrich seeing the idea that there's a demographic apocalypse on the horizon that we saw in Georgia because Stacey Abrams was cheated out of that job.
Yep.
And she went on a 2-year FU-a-thon and completely, registered.
Change the demographic. Yeah.
And then in Texas, everybody's like, it's like I got Jeopardy music going on in my head, waiting for Texas to go blue. Doom, 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 doom. Any day now.
Yeah.
Any day now.
Yeah.
Texas will go blue. But, Ted Cruz said, hey, if we lose Texas, the Republicans won't govern again for a generation.
Yes. Wonderful. But that's going to happen anyway. It's just taking longer than we want. The Republican brain, the reptilian binary of the Republican brain cannot survive given the changing demographics in the United States. So what makes people vote for Trump? Because this is something you and I have talked about for 4 years now, trying to find out what the kernel of this is. And it's extremely difficult.
He is not a president or a candidate or a leader, a public figure, because he is absolutely a leader. He is a figurehead, but he perfectly mirrored the difference between how a population feels versus a population that is interested in moving the nation forward through policy. Trump makes his people feel a certain way. He's the last white man on earth. Get behind me. I understand that you're being disenfranchised, Mr. White person. Come behind me, and we will show exactly the way this should be run, and we'll wrap it in all sorts of other messaging. American flag, jingoistic.
Yeah, you're right. And at the same time, being a populist candidate, which the Electoral College was supposed to guard against, being a populist character, they can identify with him as a person. He has qualities that allows them, and pick up on this, to all of a sudden give their tiny little lives some kind of collective importance.
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm looking, how do you, differentiate, if you're at all honest with yourself, how do you differentiate between the groupthink of these people and the groupthink of Germany in the mid 1930s?
It's so similar. And yet in Germany, here's the interesting thing. In Germany, there was a reason for people to gravitate toward a message like this. They had huge economic problems after the First World War.
Yeah.
They were very divided, the communists, and eventually what turned into the Nazis. The economy, the monetary economy, the collective national failure that they all felt. These were things that you could play. Now, what do Americans have, being as spoiled and chubby as they are? What do Americans have that you can play with? What kind of self-loathing are you playing with here? What kind of fear are you playing? Because it's really based on fear.
And think about whether now understanding what the political challenge is for wholesale and retail democratic politics, which is winning first, governing second, and consolidation of power. If you think about that, is Joe Biden the guy that's going to go after these people and erode the mechanisms of political power that they have tried to mess with? Think about rules regarding electors. Rules regarding electors. How do we get into a place where we now have to relitigate how somebody actually gets into office? Rules regarding voter registration.
Mm-hmm.
Is Joe Biden's federal government the one that's going to challenge Republicans on the things that they find on these dirty tricks?
Well, you know what I think, Seth? I think that any reasonable Democrat, I'm not a Democrat, I would never join an organization, but any reasonable Democrat should be aware of the fact that it wasn't a vote for Joe Biden. He's a bookmark. He's a placeholder for Kamala Harris, who I adore.
Me too.
And I think most Democrats. So Joe is really at the end of his run, obviously. And he, I think, eventually, in his either first, second, or third term, will abdicate to her.
And, yes.
And in a very genteel, beautifully worded gesture.
So, all right. Ronald Reagan was 77 when he was inaugurated for his first term.
Yes.
Today is Joe Biden's 78th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime a Republican, he's the oldest guy ever to be inaugurated in U.S. history. So anytime one of your Facebook friends starts going off on a rant about how Joe Biden is ancient, say, oh, really, Mr. Republican? How old was Ronald Reagan? Your idol, who, by the way, is doing cartwheels in his grave right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I met Reagan, and there was no question about the fact that he had early onset of dementia.
Yeah.
It was obvious. As soon as he went off script, he couldn't function, and his aides had to help him. Okay, so there's no question. Either that or he was heavily medicated, but I think it's the former. There's no question that he was having mental issues.
And that, Your Honor, is how we got Bernie Madoff.
That's exactly right. The thing is, he was at a point, he never had that kind of agenda that Trump does. Trump is driven by this sociopathic insanity. And he's so driven. The fact that he's alive at all, I can't believe. But he's driven by this psychosis. Reagan wasn't. He was a really nice guy.
Oh, sure.
And that's one of the reasons détente with Russia worked out, is because they thought he was basically a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jeff's with us.
He is in the comment field. He says Kamala may I put it up. Kamala may instigate a little justice after they're in. I can imagine that that's the case. I can imagine that if Joe and Kamala have the type of relationship that Obama and Biden had, that you would have the influence of a federal prosecutor in the policymaking process. But Joe, I think, the reason that Obama was, in my opinion, a failure as a president in this one area is because he didn't. What we're experiencing now is Obama's fault.
Oh, yes.
Obama did not express the power of the office for a partisan political purpose, and this is what we get. So you can blame Obama for this.
Well, you can and you can't. It's unwitting. Obama was an internationalist. He didn't wave the American flag except when he had to, because he was so smart that he considered all people on Earth to be worth the trouble.
Yeah.
Trump, on the other hand, gets in and says what everybody wants to hear, which is fuck everybody, America first. That's what every flag-waving, Bible-thumping, gun-toting nutjob in the United States wants to hear. And we've seen the result of that. And it wasn't that Obama tried to do that. He was so smart and he was so educated and he was black. He understood that it's a world community, not an American community.
Yeah, that comes from an experiential place.
Yes, very much so.
That's a product of having human empathy.
Yes,
and being a fully formed adult.
Yes.
It's
almost a Jewish thing, Seth.
Maybe so much of it seems to be. Feel free to explain.
Empathy and humor. The greatest humor on earth is Jewish humor. You and I both would say that. The ability to empathize, just the way you can look at your ancestors in Belarus getting wiped out by the Nazis and the Russians, it gives you a certain empathy.
And yet the greatest comedian that ever lived was Richard Pryor.
I would say not. I think Lenny Bruce.
Lenny Bruce was an atrocity.
He was fabulous.
Lenny Bruce was right for his time.
Yeah, well, not really.
We needed Lenny Bruce.
Yes.
We needed Lenny Bruce. By the way, when is Mrs. Maisels coming back out? How much longer do I have to wait for this?
I never followed it up. I did love McConkey's Steadicam shot. Was that in that? The telephone scene, was that in that, or was that?
It could easily be the Upper West Side of Manhattan apartment around the.
Well, it was a Steadicam shot that went sideways down a row of telephone operators. Maybe. And I thought it was, maybe it's not. Anyway, he got the award for Operator of the Year for that shot. It was an amazing shot. I have to remember what that was in. But I didn't follow that. But I have to tell you, Seth, seriously, the Queen's Gambit.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Holy shit. When you can sit and watch a chess game and be on the edge of your chair, even if you wouldn't understand chess, just because of the close-ups and the reactions and the acting. Oh, wasn't that awesome?
It was, to me, it was an accomplishment of great character development and script writing.
Catherine Marie is on.
Hey, what's up, Kate? Kate's fantastic.
Say something, my friend.
She says utterly.
Oh, what exactly?
She's talking about the Queen's Gambit. I think.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, that was, like if you, hey guys, hey Kate. So if you think about what it was that differentiated that script, just so much of what you expected in terms of just regular. She adored it. Kate said she adored it. Yeah. So if you think about regular script development, and some of the easy low-hanging fruit that they pick. I didn't see a lot of that in this show. I saw a young girl thrust into a orphanage, and I mean, how much heartstring pulling, low-hanging fruit can we possibly eke out of that? And yet all of that was avoided. They acknowledged the intellect of their audience, which is the first rule of writing a great script. And they talked about these relationships whereby her addiction formed, you know, and she, you know, how many people do we know, Jack, that have that high functioning Asperger personality? You know, how many people do we know who undiagnosed photographic memory, Asperger, you know, idiot savants ended up, you know, going to drugs and alcohol because the rest of our culture and society could not accept them for who they were?
Well, you and I talked about this because Seth and I talked the other day about what makes a good TV show. And thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we're all pretty much into that. And one of the things we talked about is, and this is what Breaking Bad did, one of the first series that did this. It would create a MacGuffin, as Hitchcock would call it, which is something you're sure the show is going to follow, a thread that you know is going to become extremely important.
Typically an item of great value.
Exactly. And it drops it.
The Maltese Falcon.
And yes, but now
the briefcase in Pulp Fiction.
Right. In contemporary drama, what they do is they present it, they introduce it to you, they get your expectations and enthusiasm up for this idea, and then they absolutely drop it. Maybe it comes back in a long time. Maybe it doesn't. In Breaking Bad, it wouldn't come back. So what happens is the usual thread, as you alluded to, Seth, that one tends to follow isn't there, which makes it so much more interesting to watch because it's unpredictable. I'm sorry?
And engaging.
Yes, incredibly engaging, because ultimately what made Pulp Fiction so amazingly as a film, it went to places you could never anticipate. And it would drop storylines that you were sure was going to be the whole rest of the film. And when that film ended, it's one of the few times I said, I could sit here for 2 more hours and watch this. And that is the reason.
I'm now seeing that what you were talking about before with Tucker Carlson going out on a limb and defending the Giuliani press conference hours after his own network debunked it.
Giuliani, what's going to happen to him?
What do you think? What do you think the cafeteria at Fox News is like? Is it tense in there?
Well, who was it? Was it Colbert? One of these guys describing they had to go over to Fox News, and he said he was walking down the corridor past the open offices. People were saying, "Take me with you."
Just like White House staffers.
Yes.
Just like White House staffers, you know, people reaching out, you know, and then the, you know, the White House chief of staff, the most recent Goebbels, or the guy who's responsible for, you know, the guy who's responsible for the hirings and the firings is like, hey, if we find out that you're looking for a job elsewhere, you're going to be fired. And I'm like, guys, you got like 61 days left in your freaking term. What are you worried about? Get out. Why? What do these people? Oh, what are they going to do? They're going to hurt your resume more? Is your CV going to be more marred up by your experience with literally the worst fascists in the history of the United States?
It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing that anyone thinks, it's always been, if you work at the White House, it's the best thing you can have on your resume. What do you do now with your resume? They said, well, Mr. Wilson, what have you been doing for the last 6 months? Did you say you spent the time with your family? I mean, what are you not going to say that you worked at Trump's White House?
I was a White House staffer, and you know, Roger Stone loved it so much he had Tricky Dick's image tattooed on his back.
I know. Have you ever seen, and they've taken them all off Google Images. They've literally cleansed it of pictures of him without his wig on, because they used to be, a couple of years ago, they used to be full of them. That guy, you talk about a pinhead.
Circus
I
freak.
mean, he is really weird looking.
Circus freak. I remember getting off the train at Grand Central Station, at Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, and reading the New York Post. The New York Post was just the greatest thing to read on the train. You know, those days of getting off the train and then your hands would be smudged with all the news ink from the New York Post. New York Post ran a story about Roger Stone, the Republican operative, and his insane wife swapping, swinging. He got outed. He was working on a campaign as a campaign manager, and everybody's like, why'd you hire this guy? He's got he's famous in the sex clubs. This guy's always been batshit crazy.
Yeah. And the ability to Trump to find these people. I mean, you have to go out to Little Russia in Astoria. No, where is it? At the end of Brooklyn. What's the name of the town? Bristol.
Brighton Beach?
Yes, Brighton Beach. The Russian taxi mob Brighton Beach crowd.
Yeah, let me tell you what it's like down there, dude. It's a different world. It's at the very end of a straight avenue, a series of straight avenues that go from the Manhattan Bridge all the way down to the tip of Brooklyn. And it's like an island. It's cut off. You have to, that Coney Island is actually an island. Mm-hmm. But Brighton Beach is this seaside community where, ironically enough, Donald Trump's father built a ton of houses. And then all the way down at the end of Brighton Beach is Coney Island. And then Coney Island, at the end of Coney Island, is where they used to have these, I guess, Jack, they're like summertime bungalows, like little wood structures.
Yes. And
they had these public housing or like middle income housing developments, Mitchell Lama, like these awful 1960s construction apartment buildings, these late 50s and 60s. They're like America's answer to Stalinist Russian apartment blocks,
right. Yep.
So my grandmother and grandfather used to live, because my grandfather loved the water. He used to live right next to Coney Island Creek in one of these houses. It was on West 36th Street. 2 blocks over from there is Seagate. Seagate is an Orthodox Jewish gated community that Jeffrey Epstein grew up in. So while we're thinking about how long these relationships go back in time, Donald Trump's father developed all of that Coney Island, Brighton Beach, all of those apartments where they warehoused old Jews from Russia,
right,
and the new Jews who used to be from Russia,
mm-hmm.
And Belarus.
Yes,
all those people. Jeff says Fred Trump tried to buy Coney Island, but couldn't get it to happen. Jeff is actually right. And what Fred Trump tried to do was to buy, he did buy Steeplechase, which was the iconic playground in Coney Island. And that son of a bitch, you remember that wonderful Alfred E. Newman character that used to be the smiling face with the hair part in the middle that used to be the symbol of Steeplechase?
Mm-hmm.
On the side of the glass building that used to be Steeplechase was a stained glass relief of that face.
Really?
From the 1920s or the turn of the century.
Tasty people.
Fred Trump got donors, his rich friends. He threw a party and they hurled bricks through that stained glass. That is where Donald Trump gets his sense of history and the aesthetic and the importance of beautiful things.
He was also arrested in a pro-Nazi rally.
He was. He was. So that's who these people are.
So this is why, Donald, these are the people that these are the smartest and brightest that he can find in his universe.
The best people. The best people. The best people, by the way, is code. You know what the best people is? The people who are most able to cloak their own racism.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Miller is the best people.
Boy, is he is, when I do this Photoshop Nuremberg trial, he is going to fit in absolutely perfectly in the doc.
Oh.
Imagine that face.
Even his face looks, horribly authoritarian.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
And Stephen, with that sprayed hair.
Yeah, that was a classic.
And when was the last? And that was, I mean, if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
that was the last time that guy was on television representing the Trump administration, isn't it?
I think so.
Can you imagine Trump? Just picture this, Jack.
Yep.
Trump is in the residence,
mm-hmm.
anxiously awaiting his own personal Goering to go on TV.
Yep.
Very, very excited about the appearance on Sunday morning of
mm-hmm.
Stephen Miller. And then all of a sudden, the worst thing in the world happens.
Which is?
I'll show you in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, this. Here you go, Jack. There you go. That's what you're greeted with. That's what you're greeted with on Sunday morning. That's Stephen Miller.
That is, and he doesn't look that good now anymore.
He's aged poorly.
I want to show you a picture I took this morning. I got up and I have two phones. My other iPhone, because I got a new one, was lying and it was on charge. And it just happened to have the guitar tuning app as it was plugged in
front of the camera. Can't see it.
I'm working
it. Now I can see it.
Look at that.
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't that unbelievable?
How did that happen?
It just happened to be sitting there. I plugged it in and the guitar app was up. So I photographed it. Isn't that cool?
That's great.
Yeah, I like that.
That's great. I can't believe that what the designers made that a coincidence.
Yes. Oh, this is another beautiful meme somebody put up. Okay.
I won little bighorn by a lot. I won it by a lot.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Oh my God. When are the Senate Republicans? When are they likely? When do we see Moscow Mitch make the pilgrimage to the White House and say, Donnie, it's over, Donnie?
Well, they did it exactly like that with Nixon. But Nixon realized one thing Trump doesn't realize much. Nixon realized because he had stalled the talks with North Vietnam, that thousands of extra Americans had died, and he would have been indicted for treason. Okay, he realized that, and they had to remind him of that fact, that he would be condemned for treason. Because he did that. He stalled the talks with North Vietnam. Trump doesn't have that kind of impetus. This is another meme I did with Donald. He's riding his dirt bike as the wheels are falling off.
As the wheels are falling off. Did you see that jump? It was the best jump ever.
Yeah.
I did the best jump in history.
Right. The landing, not so much.
Not so much with the landing.
Can you imagine those forks going in?
I can fantasize.
Yes, I know.
I can fantasize. I'm just not able to sew together how this guy ends up in handcuffs. He knows it's coming. Obviously, from her reaction, Ivanka knows it's coming. Jared knows it's coming. Do these people end up beating a hasty retreat from the White House, leaving it vacant on January the 18th or the 17th, and hopping on a private jet to the United Arab Emirates, hopping on a private jet to the Dhaka in Moscow? What's the destination?
Yeah, I think that there is a go bag somewhere, probably at Dulles. And the go bag involves a lot of money that he raised for his reelection campaign. And do you know that a couple of years ago, when it was going a little better for Donald, that Ivanka was walking around the White House talking about how she could inherit the presidency?
I remember that.
You talk about psychotic.
You talk about psychotic.
That bimbo? I mean, please. God, that's how psychotic being spoiled makes you, Seth. This is a lesson, okay, in spoiled people.
So, and just so you don't think it's one-sided, there are Democrats that will argue that these people should not be prosecuted.
Okay, now Jeff says, read Jeff's text, Seth.
I can do better, my friend. I'm going to show it on screen.
Okay.
How has he been avoided being prosecuted for treason? It's easy answer, Jeff. It's called the United States Senate and Mitch McConnell.
That's exactly right.
And as long as that's the case, McConnell is as criminally culpable as politically and criminally culpable as Trump himself. He's as much of a traitor to this country as Trump himself was.
I would also add to that, Seth, that my feeling is, and I've had this for a few years, ever since I watched Trump kowtowing up to Putin, is that Putin doesn't have more financial dirt on Trump. There's too much out there already. It's not going to make any difference to anybody how much more. I think that Putin, when he met privately with Trump, alluded to, did not say, he was not factual, he alluded to the fact that maybe he had purchased a video from the back of Epstein's plane.
Yeah.
With Trump and a 15-year-old.
Yeah,
now,
you know it's out there, man.
He wouldn't.
You know it's out there.
The thing about blackmail is this: it's much more powerful if the person does not know specifically what you have. Putin, who was head of the Stasi in East Germany in his career, which is literally more ruthless than being head of the GRU or the KGB, was the world's master at compromat, which is the Russian word for compromise. And if he had gotten wind that Epstein had videotaped his clients in the back of that plane, because how did Epstein make his money? It wasn't investing, it was blackmail.
Of course.
Okay, so if he had even gotten the slightest wind that Trump could have been one of those clients, he would have paid $200-300 million. It doesn't matter, because you have the president of the United States in your pocket. And to me, that is what happened. That's the reality of it, because no amount of financial wrongdoing could hurt Trump anymore. He's done it all.
Well, so I guess once that comes out, which it invariably will, what happens geopolitically? Now, the Russians obviously know that payback is coming. What happens geopolitically? They, by the way, consider this, the owning of Donald Trump, payback for their own stupidity and the end of the Soviet Union. The end of the Soviet Union, if you watched Chernobyl, as the rest of us did, was a result of the world finding out how incompetent Soviet management was at Chernobyl.
Exactly right.
And of course, the proliferation of communications technology.
Yep. Exactly right. So this may come out. Would it affect his base? Probably not. Because as much as Americans pretend to think that pedophilia is the worst crime on the planet, and they certainly do in prison, that's why I refer to Donald as Donnie Chomo, because in prison lingo, Chomo means child molester.
Yep.
I don't think, the question is this more than that, Seth, is how will Putin respond to Trump's suggesting moving to the USSR?
Right, Russia. I mean, and if you were paying attention recently, I posted a couple of weeks ago or last week, the Russian Abe Froman, the sausage king of Russia, was resting peacefully with his mistress in the sauna in his dacha in Moscow. And for those who don't know what a dacha is, it's a little vacation home in suburban Moscow for the ultra wealthy. And in this sauna, he received through the center of his chest a crossbow bolt.
Let me interrupt you. I think that may have been not in Russia.
It was in Russia.
Yeah. Oh, was it? You sure about that? I thought
the sausage king of Russia.
I understand that, but I thought it was like in Mexico or like a Trotsky thing that he was offshore.
I know, yeah. Okay. How cool would that be if they got another Russian they wanted to kill in Mexico City?
Well, the thing is, that's what the Russians do. That's why you get all the London poisonings, and that's what they do. He sends a very, very clear message to people.
So this was November 3rd, and the guy's name, the headline is Russia's Sausage King killed with crossbow in his home sauna.
Oh.
And the guys, and I'm going to try the name, okay? A Russian oligarch reportedly nicknamed the Sausage King. So obviously he had a porn career as well. Was killed with a crossbow in his sauna after masked robbers broke into his home. Investigators said Monday the man and his wife were in their banya, a traditional Russian sauna outside Moscow, when several masked men tied them up and demanded they give up the money kept in their home. The wife managed to get free and alert police, who discovered the man's body. While inspecting the scene, investigators seized the crossbow the man was shot with. The robbers escaped with the victim's car, which was found near Istra, a town west of Moscow. So this is the guy's name was Vladimir Marugov, 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 who owns numerous meat processing factories and is known as the Sausage King, according to Interfax.
You know what this should be? This should be a commercial for Bornstein litigation.
Right. Have you been shot in the chest with a crossbow?
With a crossbow.
Are you tired of masked intruders breaking into your banya?
Right. So I want to ask you a question that I truly don't know the answer to. What is the status of the Magnitsky Act at the moment?
Wow. I mean, wow. Talk about dredging up something from 2012, huh?
But it's still an issue with the Russians. So for those of you who don't know, the Magnitsky Act was something that was passed during the Obama administration because there was a anti-establishment, anti-Putin lawyer in Moscow who went after Putin and brought out the fact that he had stolen 212 million from some whatever, which is nothing because Putin is probably worth about 50 or 100 billion. And he was taken and put in an insane asylum for a year and eventually was killed one way or the other. And when the Obama administration got wind of this, they passed an act which said that any foreign government that's been guilty of crimes against humanity, that this would be a case of, that America could seize its assets in the United States, which they did. And one of the things that Trump and his friends did as soon as they took power, and talked about it even before that, that meeting in Trump Tower, that classic meeting where they're talking about orphans, that was discussing how they could stop and reverse the Magnitsky Act because so much Russian capital was frozen in the United States. And Mitch was a very big part of that. That he got an aluminum plant from Russia in a poor part of his state. So he was he was pushing like crazy to lift all sanctions, financial sanctions on Russia.
But Democrats are more corrupt, right?
Always, always. Have you seen her emails?
No, I'm still waiting.
Yeah. But anyway, so I was interested where that stands, because this is still a thing, Seth.
You know where I think it stands, actually? Probably in the Southern District of New York.
Why would it be a state?
Southern District of New York Federal Court.
Oh, federal court.
SDNY.
Gotcha.
So in the so here's the issue. We're now suffering Donald Trump's embarrassment and spite. And he's salting the earth of democracy because he's pissed at are we holding you, Jack? Do you need to be somewhere?
No, I wanted to show you I love cheap watches with cool faces. Check out that little sucker. Hang on one second. Isn't that cool?
That's cool.
That's
I bet
like
it looks
$35. Look at that.
It looks like it glows in the dark.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Yeah. Excuse me. Getting back to time in the joint.
Yes.
So, like, Donald Trump is trying to sell this whole idea that he was cheated in 2016. We don't know what sealed indictments are going to open up as soon as that were the product of the Mueller investigation, who are going to, retroactively exonerate Mueller from really screwing the pooch and not indicting a sitting U.S. president.
The question that you started posing, which I thought was fascinating, is it's obvious that Joe Biden, to try to be a healer, is not going to be too enthusiastic about going after Trump too dramatically. Now, Kamala would be a different animal, okay? And the question is, who's going to be the attorney general? I'm rooting for Hillary. Sang-froid.
I think she's absolute political poison for anyone.
True.
I think Val Demings is a better choice, but in terms of actual Clinton involvement, in any way, shape, or form, the toxicity, you got to remember that sitting right next to Jeff Epstein in the Isle of Lost Girls is Bill Clinton. I know. And that's coming out, man. It's coming out. There are some nervous freaking people in Chappaqua.
Yes. I agree with you 100%. The number of times that he flew on that plane means he definitely wanted to come back for more of whatever they were serving as hors d'oeuvres.
Well, just think about him and think about the level of women he was able to pull before. Paula Jones, he wasn't exactly distinguishing himself.
Yeah.
In the I can pull supermodels. It was his aesthetic belied a trailer park mentality about which girls he should be screwing.
Okay. Did you ever see a picture of Hillary when she was at Radcliffe?
I have.
What a fox.
Yeah, she was cute.
She was. And, she wore glasses. She looked absolutely great. Absolutely great.
Well.
Oh, hang on one sec, Seth. I got to take this. Remember Tom Cantlin? Hi, Tom. Good. How are you? How you feeling?
Now we're listening in on.
Do you want to do dinner? Do you want to do dinner tonight?
Okay, that's good. Here's what I can do. Watch this.
Okay.
I'm gonna hide, and then I'm gonna bring him back in later. Watch that. So as soon as he's off the phone, we're gonna get to hear from Jack again. But in the meantime, I'm gonna do an episode on CNN and the relationship between the Epsteins, Ghislaine Maxwell, the Clintons, and the people who run CNN. There we go. Jack is back. All right. Jack, I was just telling the audience while you were on the phone that I was going to do an episode dealing with the relationship. We are going to do an episode dealing with the relationship between CNN and Jeff Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell et al.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that's hidden. It's not something that's special to us. I just happen to know some of the people involved. And to say it's disturbing, these relationships is really, really underselling how disturbing it actually is.
Well, you had mentioned, Seth, that when it comes to criminality, sexual perversion, that the 1% are the big perpetrators.
Yeah. Yeah, the difference. I mean,
I love it. Did you see Jeff's comment?
Yeah, I mean, Adam Schiff.
He's great, Seth.
He is. Does that mean there's a special election?
Oh yes, for the House.
For the House seat. I mean, it's not as if, it's not as if we got, it's not as if the DNC did a great job. It's not as if AOC did House Democrats any favors at all.
But his suggestion, I mean, Jeff, I have to tell you, he is gold. He is the gold standard. I am so impressed with him. What a mind.
Adam Schiff.
Yes.
And he has the ability to contextualize political content into legal terms, which is, it's the superpower of these people.
How about Stephen Colbert?
Is he a member of the bar?
He could be. I mean, it's a pretty low bar now, right?
I mean, we have only the best people too.
Yes, that's right.
He could be the White House speechwriter.
Oh, he would.
Or could he?
I think the person that presents the, like Kellyanne and all those people.
Who's Jeffrey Berman?
Oh, Jeffrey.
Robert Lichtman says, or Jeffrey Berman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is open. This is available to the public, Jack.
Yes.
We're streaming this to the public.
So,
is Robert Lichtman a friend of yours, or is he actually the very first guest that we have that is not a friend of anyone's?
I think he's a friend of mine. As a matter of fact,
well,
I think he is. So ask Robert who Berman is here.
You just said it. Who is Berman? Who is Jeffrey Berman? The name sounds familiar.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can tell you a couple of things about Jeffrey Berman. He's almost certainly Jewish.
No.
Yes. Yes, which is a good thing. Oh, he's a friend. He's one of Robert Lichtman's friends.
Oh, I should know that name. I should be. I'm sure he's a friend of mine on Facebook.
And it's becoming more likely that he's a member of the bar as well.
Do you know something, Seth? Is that my friends have been crawling up toward 1800 for months, in the 1770s. And they've taken in the last couple of weeks a backslide of 20 people. What does that mean? So it's like down to 750.
You've lost friends.
After the election.
The level of Churchill vitriol is too much for something.
I think you're absolutely right. And believe me, I empathize with all of them because in my defense, Seth, and I've told you this before, and I'm sure to Jeff also, is Southern District of New York. That's where we know Berman from. Exactly.
Yeah, SDNY. Good. Thank you, Robert.
That's Robert. That is a great suggestion.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But of course, Robert, we can't spare him because he's going to be busy.
That's right.
Shortly. He's going to be busy shortly. How would you deprive him of standing in front of, the Honorable Jack Weinstein, my grandfather's dear friend, the Honorable Jack Weinstein in the Southern District of New York? How could you possibly deprive Jeff Berman of that pleasure.
It's not depriving him,
4 years.
Seth. It's not depriving him. It's depriving us.
You know what? You're absolutely right.
Yes, of just what is going to be the best TV ever imaginable.
What is going to be? What is your Christmas present that you want, Jack? What is it that you want to see? For me, it's Trump in handcuffs in the orange jumpsuit.
It's not even that. Just him having to show up in court, getting up early to go to court by 8:30 to make an appearance. Just that is worth the price of admission.
Who are the defense attorneys?
Can you imagine him sitting in court with his attorneys, listening to the allegations and the judge and not interrupting?
Mr. President, you're in contempt.
What did Jeff just say? It's not.
It's not vitriol if you agree. If you disagree, it's only vitriol if you disagree.
Oh, interesting. Can you imagine watching Trump try to control his mouth in court after years of everybody having to listen to every breath he took?
Now, look, dude, here's a guy that has existed on a steady diet of anger, fatty foods, KFC, Taco Bell, Burger King, McDonald's, and whatever the White House chef doesn't get screamed at when he makes for him.
Right.
4 years plus whatever his physical history was before that, on top of a steady diet of Adderall, Xanax, and whatever else this frickin' idiot takes.
Like constant stroking.
So this guy, what's going to happen is this guy's going to stroke the F out and is going to be, he'll have a little bib and a little drool bucket or whatever they suit him out with, you know. He'll be in the hospital wing of Rikers for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I think no matter what happens, we're going to get cheated.
I agree. Because the amount of payback is so huge, we can only be cheated. I mean, if you talk about years of waterboarding and boiled in oil and a number of medieval wonderful tortures, that's literally what he deserves.
It is. And really, you know, and people like you and I, we sit here on the mid-coast of Maine and we target our anger at Trump. I mean, I can't if you ask me, Jack, how many times the name Trump was spit out of both of our mouths between 2015 and now, and how many times we batted forth these exact same conversations, it's incalculable. But, you know, the real truth of the matter, the real truth of our matter, is that there are people here in the mid-coast who we used to be Facebook friends with who we're not Facebook friends with anymore.
Yes.
And if you read Anne Applebaum's book, Twilight of Democracy, which is a fabulous book, if you read that, she urges you to avoid the experience of Hungary and Poland and Eastern Europe authoritarianism, to attack what she calls the clerks of fascist Bolshevism.
Yes.
Bolshevism is what these people want. What we were talking about an hour ago, these people want one party rule in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They want a minority rule. They want an apartheid form of government, and they're not going to stop until they get it.
That's true.
That's fascist Bolshevism.
Yes.
So what our job is here, and I got to be honest, I'm proud that I did it. Our job is to attack the fascist Bolsheviks in our community.
I agree. It has to be on a community level. And, you know, ultimately, on a community level, after the Germans conceded, the Allies would round up people from the neighboring towns of Dachau or Ravensbrück, any of these places, and they would take them out on a weekend and march them by the pits of rotting bodies so that they were forced to look at what they had supported. And that shame content, that's something we have to push on a local level because it's very hard to do nationally. And I think and maybe it's just vindictive, but I think that every Trump supporter locally, and that includes in Camden.
Oh, hold on a sec, Jack. It's just too good to be true. I'm going to put the comment up on the screen.
Okay.
Justin Gushy from Appleton, Maine chimes in. You guys are hilarious. Your job is to attack anyone who disagrees with you. No, actually, Justin, I consider my job politically neutering anyone who is anti-American. That's my job. My job as a patriot is to confront people who want Republican one-party rule in this country and people who would actively disenfranchise black voters in Detroit. I'll tell you why. Because that's not America. What America is counting the votes of the people who voted, regardless of their skin color. That's what it is. Okay. Other topic for conversation. It goes on. You guys gonna drag us Trump supporters off to the gulag. The gulag. What would a Maine gulag be called? I know, Aroostook County.
Exactly what I was going to say.
The gulag Aroostapelago.
How about Southern Canada?
Southern Canada.
Where it's half socialist to begin with.
The gulag archipelago. No, Justin. But in order to participate in a democracy, you have to have, and to Justin's credit, by the way, I posed this question to him on his wall. I said, Justin, question for you. Do you believe that Democrats should be allowed to govern? And Justin said, yeah, just Democrats govern poorly. And ignoring, 250,000 bodies, ignoring Republican lack of platform for this election, ignoring all of those things, ignoring the astonishing failure of this administration. A wall that poorly conceived and executed that doesn't work, a huge waste of time and money, appealing to xenophobia, dividing people who are erstwhile friends like you and I from each other.
How about this? How about on an international level, the same thing, of insulting all our allies and kissing the asses of all the autocrats.
Yeah.
All our enemies, kissing their asses.
Kissing our enemies' asses.
Is that good governing? I mean, really.
And so what I've noticed is when confronted with this type of back and forth, there's just like, you never get an answer. I mean, the image of an American president beholden to a Russian thug is so inconceivable given the rest of the world's geopolitical history. It's so inconceivable that it's just off the charts. But, here's the fear. It's the sense of other. First, we had a black guy president. That was terrifying for these people. All right.
Listen, I think
trying for peace with enemies was a horrible idea. That's not what it was. It wasn't trying for peace with enemies. It's understanding who your competitors are. And what did we get? I mean, if we're being honest about what we get out of it, what the hell have we gotten out of our new relationship with a country that has an economy the size of New York plus maybe Rhode Island as a geopolitical competitor? What have we gotten out of it? We haven't gotten anything out of it other than international humiliation and lack of American authority globally.
The other thing is, I want to point out, Justin, it wasn't trying for peace. It was kowtowing under some autocratic, awful bully leader because you admired that they had powers over their country that you didn't have. Although I want to give you a shout out. The fact that you're contributing is great. And I think Seth agrees.
Although he rage quit detente, which was very sad for me. But, it's like, that page and this show has to be run in a fact-based universe. Let's talk about this. Trump killed Russians in Syria. Well, he bombed a airfield, right? Gave weapons to Ukraine, has dramatically withdrawn and enabled Putin's expansionist policies in Ukraine, and opposed the Russian-German pipeline. If I had to guess, I would say that opposition to the Russian-German pipeline has more to do with U.S. domestic natural gas exports than it has to do with a geopolitical question, although I really don't know enough about it. I do know that if you go to the heating oil companies here in Maine, and of course, let's give Justin Dusty a shout out. If anybody needs, I'm gonna
go to the men's room.
Okay. So if anybody needs firewood, Justin, are you selling firewood still this year? Type in yes. Type in no. But if you go to the heating oil companies in the mid-coast, or as I like to call them, indoor comfort companies, and you look at what the cost for delivered heating oil is this year, you will see that it is just around $1.61 or 62 to $2.25 per gallon. That's called demand destruction. The oil and gas business is in terrible decline. Tree length, firewood only. If you have a mind to cut your own firewood, contact Justin Gushy on Facebook. He will deliver tree length firewood. You are welcome. I always like to promote the people who work with their hands in this economy. It's not an easy thing to do. And Justin risks life and limb. He was in the freaking woods last winter or 2 winters ago, I forget what it is, and got clocked by a birch tree. And thank God there was snow in the ground. Otherwise, he wouldn't be having this conversation right now. So if you need tree length wood, call Justin Gushy, get him on Facebook, and he will get it delivered to you. Justin, you delivering tree length wood, or we'll straighten that out later. At any rate, Justin holds a history degree from University of Maine or University of Southern Maine. I can't remember which. And despite that, he has absolutely no concept of the impact of Trumpism on the history of the United States, or he refuses to acknowledge it. Or worse, he's an active cheerleader for the Steve Bannon idea of destroying everything and then building it back up again. That doesn't work, by the way.
Okay.
Jack, are you back with us?
Yes. I think what has to be said is when you make any statement, Trump killed Russians in Syria, whatever it is, it doesn't matter whether the right or the left. One, you can't just make a statement these days, unfortunately, because why people do things is so complex that you have to spend so much time analyzing. Like, you notice what Seth did is he started talking about why, what really happened and why. And unfortunately, I myself included, the reason these decisions are made often, this is before Trump. Now, most of the decisions are made just spur of the moment because of a narcissistic sociopath. But in general, political decisions are made by extremely smart people for extremely intricate reasons, usually to enrich themselves. And if you haven't analyzed that process in its entirety, you can't even judge the action itself because there's so much behind it that we don't see. Now, Trump has changed that, okay, because he's an idiot.
So look at the question now that we've been asked. Yes, delivery, good, thank you, Justin. Justin will deliver tree-length wood to your house. And speaking about tree-length wood, let's go to the woodshed. Do you think Putin appreciated Trump demanding NATO pay more? I think Trump's intention was to disrupt for the sake of disruption, and I think that he had people whispering in his ear that that's what his acolytes and followers desired. This is a Steve Bannon idea that NATO pay more. Some ideas are long time coming and good ideas. Confronting China and their trade policies, low hanging fruit. Why not? Of course, we should be beating the shit out of China and their obviously aggressive trade policies. Biden himself has stated quite clearly that that will continue on. However, disrupting the established relationships with our longest term allies, diminishing their importance by referring to them as old Europe. These are centuries old trade and political relationships, and they represent a power structure that is entrenched and has served the United States very, very well. So the idea of getting NATO to pay more, I think, goes hand in hand with the image of Trump, manhandling the president of Montenegro as he forces his way bullishly to the front of the stage and then stands there looking like a fucking idiot. The idea that there's a whole new world order of Trumpism, and that new world order is going to be led by authoritarian strongmen. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't exactly see Duterte on the Algonquin round on the wall of great leaders of the world, or Erdogan for that matter. So here we have a link: U.S. service members injured in Syria after skirmish with Russian forces. Okay. Okay. I'm not sure if that conflict or engagement belies any greater policy. It sounds like what happens when two military forces are in close proximity to each other, and there is a failure of leadership at the top, which would dictate what the rules of engagement are. I think that what you're posting speaks to the stupidity of the Trump administration rather than something that they should be credited for. Okay.
Seth, who is the picture of that blonde woman that you posted on Facebook?
Oh, yeah. Every time I hear, I was talking about her earlier. Every time I hear that we're going to be speeding FDA approval of vaccines, I can't think of wondering whatever happened to this crazy bitch, Elizabeth. What's her face? The one with the blood testing at home, the blood testing device at home. The one from the documentary.
Seth, she's not the one they've installed in the office to keep an eye on everybody, is it? Because there is, yeah.
No. This one is Elizabeth Holmes, Holmes. Right. Elizabeth Holmes. Now she's the. I'm going to put her picture up, and we're going to remember the. I'm going to put her picture up right now on screen, and we can start a conversation about Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes was the one that ingratiated herself to movers and shakers and former government officials, and here she is. There's our crazy girl, Elizabeth Holmes. There was a documentary about her, and she started a company that was meant to do blood testing at home. So
I remember, and it was all a scam.
And the whole thing was a scam, and she had this kind of, it made it easy to hate smart people, Mm-hmm. It made it okay to and then she had this fake voice that she affected.
Oh.
And she spoke like this, and it was this husky, and it was like a whole put on. The whole thing was a put on. and
Amazing.
and because she's blonde and pretty and spoke in the nomenclature of the biotech and entrepreneurial world, and because she said the right things and knew how to, talk about valuations and product development, because she was a wonk in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Just another person that said things that weren't true. I mean,
So many scammers.
yeah. So Jeff tells us this bit of important news that we couldn't deal without. Got to take this call. Catch you in a little while. Jeff, we will catch you in a little while, buddy. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your participation. Now, unlike our previous episode, Jack,
Mm-hmm.
we had like, I don't know. We've had a constant stream of viewers for quite a while, but low numbers.
Yes.
So this will go up online, and then later on, people will watch it, much like they did last time.
Well, if I played the guitar again, I think you'd see the numbers jump.
Yeah, from 4. Oh, see, you even talked about picking up the guitar, and we lost one. It was steady at 5 for so long, and then Jack said, "If I pick up the guitar, it's down to 4."
Yeah, dropping like a stone. You know what I find fascinating, though, is the last thing, is how the market has been reacting recently.
What does that look like?
Well, they love the idea of Biden.
Yeah, I mean, some kind of stability, right?
Yeah, and they predict that if somehow Bucket Face pulled this coup off, the market would drop at least 4,000 points. And I think that's true. They love the idea that there's stability back in the world and that we're not being led by a crazy person that could make a decision overnight that would bring us nuclear holocaust. So it's fascinating watching the market, but they're very optimistic now that Biden has won.
Yeah, and that, and we haven't we haven't heard that from anyone. We haven't heard anyone in the Trump sphere talk about the stock market once.
Well, Fox isn't going to mention it. Yeah, they're how they're really looking forward to this, and even on election night, you could see on election night or the day after election when it wasn't decided, I think it ticked up 600, went back to 5, because they were looking at Biden probably winning. For all his screaming about how good the stock market's doing, they want him gone.
Yeah, in the worst possible way.
In the worst possible way.
I mean, the Dow right now is flirting with 30,000.
I know. That's super high. Okay.
It's just amazing. If you look at the past month, starting on election day, I mean, the Dow was, just south of 26,000 on election day.
Yep.
And after election day, the Dow skyrocketed. It had been as high as 29,950. It just, it just keeps bumping its head on 30,000.
Yeah.
And the chart now has it as 29,350. So it looks, to me, it looks like the Dow is thinking about it. It's thinking about it. But we still find ourselves in this transitional limbo. But the overall trend is, hey, the people on the street think that this is a really great time for American business. And I think they're right. And I think that there's going to be a massive infrastructure bill passed. Finally, I think that we're going to have green technologies taking off. Yeah. I think that in this 4 years, by the time we get done, the concept of, and Justin rightly points out that they probably like the idea of a vaccine too, a vaccine that the Trump administration has wrongly tried to take credit for.
Yes.
And Pfizer said, we don't want any part of this politicization of our vaccine.
ultimately, it's if we can get rid of both of the viruses, you're going to see the economy skyrocket.
Are you referring to COVID and Republicans?
Yes.
Those two viruses?
Let's call it the Trump virus.
Virus.
If we can get rid of the uncertainty of the nation being led by a sociopath and to conquer the virus, can you imagine what the American economy is going to do?
No, I can't. And I can't imagine, America is, the idea of American exceptionalism has been so trodden upon. But the truth is that we are a nation of people that can do things, and we believe in our system, and the system empowers us to do things.
And it worked.
And it worked.
The system worked.
It really did. And that while we're stuck reviling Donald Trump and what he stands for, while we're stuck in that mess, why don't we just take a minute to show some appreciation for the founders of this nation and the smarts that they expressed when this structure of separation of powers, which has, as of now, it's looking like it's going to pass its most serious test in history.
Absolutely. I mean, when you have a president that dictates to the attorney general what he should do, and he does that, that is such a constitutional violation. It's gobsmacking.
It is.
And, it would have been easier to do in the 1800s or the early 1900s because there was no social media. But this is being done in full, bright daylight, given what the media is. And he gets away with it, which is, it's just unbelievable, telling Barr what to do.
And we come back to our original question that we started the podcast with. The people that support Donald Trump, are they capable of being citizens in a representative democracy? Are they capable of understanding that another party that you disagree with is entitled to share power? Are they capable of appreciating that when more black and brown babies are born as American citizens, and those black and brown babies grow up, and those Jewish babies grow up, and there are more of them than you, then they get to make the fucking rules. And some of the rules that you've established to disenfranchise those people are going bye-bye.
Keep in mind, Seth, and we always said this is a delaying action. They are about to get overrun by the demographics. They do not like it. It's no longer going to be a white country. And they really should realize this about any kind of change. A lot of it, if we could go on forever, a lot of it cannot be stopped. Okay. System gives Trump right to go through the courts. No. No.
Well, there's a difference. So this is great. Let's talk about the difference between norms,
right,
and what it means, because we're talking about the difference between somebody who perceives a system defined by absolutes with no black, and so let's tackle one question at a time. The authoritarian personality type says over and over and over again, show me the evidence in court that he colluded with Russia. Show me the evidence in court that what he has done is impeachable. And impeachment is a political process. It's a legal process, but it's also a political process. That's what the founders intended. So when you ask for hard evidence, it's the actions of the individual and whether or not they're illegal in the political opinion of the people who are in the court. That is the House. The impeachment was a slam dunk case. And if it weren't for Moscow Mitch, we would have President Pence right now. Maybe.
That has a ring, doesn't it?
President Pence.
PP. Anyway,
So the other question that we'll end with, black and brown babies are going to be voting more and more with me.
No, they're
That
not.
means Justin thinks that black and brown babies are going to be disproportionately Republicans. Because, of course, what would black and brown people rather do than vote alongside the people who have been trying to steal their vote for all these many years? It has been 155 years since the end of the Civil War, and we can trace this line of structural organized racism to this very moment in time.
I think that I've got to go, Seth, but I think the idea that we've talked about, that Republicans forever have not been aware of who it is that's really shoving it up their ass. And it's the Republicans. It's
you mean the electorate itself, not
is not aware of who has been screwing them all this time. And it's the 1%, it's the Republicans, it's the rich people. They would rather blame little black people and brown people and Jews and whatever the hell else, illegal aliens. The thing about it is, it's obvious if you read history, the people that are fucking them are on the right, and yet they still vote for them. It's sad. It's really, it just gives you the idea of the power of misinformation.
It does. But you can't find very many black people who are unsophisticated in this area because they are the victims of this discrimination.
That's exactly right.
And they can't afford to be unsophisticated in this situation. And when you listen to what black and brown people have to say, by the way, I'm abundantly aware of how condescending it is for two old white men to be discussing the ideas of what black and brown people feel. I'm sorry, I understand. But at least I'm open enough to have a conversation with people who are affected by discrimination and to advocate for them. And when you do so, when you listen to what they're actually saying, what they're saying is the truth about this system of organized structural racism and the rules that they confront every day that we don't confront.
You want to tune in Patrick Lawton?
I do. Patrick says the first question is let's go to this: divide and conquer and reap the spoils. I suppose so, but that math changes when you have a larger piece to divide. Jack, do you have to take off?
Yeah, I have to go soon, Seth. Let's
okay, buddy. Well,
you can keep talking to Justin.
Okay, and I'll close with this. Justin makes a good observation that black and brown people are also not monolithic, and which is great. I love it that Justin is parroting my comments to him on our Facebook walls. Yes, as I said to you last week, that's exactly correct. The idea that the Hispanic vote is not monolithic and that Republicans could fear bait Cubans with the ghost of Hugo Cesar Chavez, who's been dead for 6 years, is really fantastic. Also, if you know anything about the Latino community, you'll also discover quite quickly that there is a cultural hierarchy in that community and that the Cubans perceive themselves and are perceived as the most affluent. So it's not surprising that they would vote with their Republican white overlords.
Mostly in Florida. So you should read Patrick's comment.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for contributing.
Yeah, Justin, thank you. But Patrick's comment is good. Okay.
They chose Biden because they knew he was the only person to counteract passive racism and slightly right of center people. Yeah, I agree, Patrick. I would say that for those reasons, Biden was the guy to win. Now the question is Biden a wartime general, and can he govern as such? We are going to put a pin in this. Jack is leaving. We're going to come back on Monday afternoon around lunchtime and do this all again then.
Sure.
We'll do a couple of hours of give and take, and we'll have the weekend of stupidity to of Trumpist stupidity to fuel us forward. So, for the world famous cameraman Jack Churchill and yours truly, Seth Silverton, I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.